Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Eastern Shore Undercover Podcast, episode number 5. I'm your host, Daryl Campbell, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in today to the podcast. I think this is the start of some really good podcasts that we'll have lined up with some special guests from right here on the shore. As you can see, joining me here today on the podcast is none other than our very own Wicomico County Executive, Miss Julie Giordano. Madam Giordano, welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to join us. I know you're a very busy schedule. And speaking of schedules, I got to ask, because everybody always jokes around about this, but how do you find the time to go to all these events? I saw you were out at one of the ribbon cutting events yesterday, and then the day before you were at the playgrounds. And how do you find time for all this?
I think it all came from campaigning. So my campaign schedule was I would teach during the day, and then, at 3:00, we hit the ground running. So I actually am thankful that my husband and my son, they both box. And so they box, sometimes, 3 to 4 nights a week. So they're doing that, 6 to 8. And so I was going out to different events and things like that. So it's it makes it tricky sometimes, but the ribbon cuttings and things like that, that's always the best part of the job, because you get to see something that you had been working on, and then you see the reality of the fruits of your your labor. So
yeah. And what was that last night? It was the playground,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yeah. So Powellville, they were very adamant about a playground that they wanted at Atkins Mill Park. They have a lot of families that live in Powellville, and they wanted to have an area where people could congregate, but also have a place where children could play. And so Lynn Mitchell was just so monumental in this whole thing. She was the voice of the community. And I think this is the perfect example of government done right. She came forward, there was an issue. We looked at what we could do, and we were able to use program open space money, and we were able to do the ribbon cutting. And so you saw, that dream or that, concept become a reality yesterday. And
Awesome.
That's really the way I think the government is supposed to work, in collaboration with the community, fulfilling the needs of the community. So yesterday was a perfect example of that.
Awesome. I want to jump right in. I know you're busy. I want to start off with a few questions that I think are a bit confusing to myself, and my wife had brought up a couple of questions the other day, and so we figured we would get right into that.
Sure.
Can we start off with explaining what exactly does the county executive position entail?
Right.
What do you do on a daily basis? What decisions do you make? You share with us, what's the county executive's daily routine look like?
Yeah, so to kind of break that question apart, so the county executive position is a position that was brought forth, in this county in 2006. People wanted to see a balance of power. They wanted to be able to elect an official. And I think that's one of the biggest things to remember in this position is the person who runs the county under a councilmanic form of government is chosen by the council. So they answer to the council. The county executive is voted by the people. So my boss is literally every single citizen. So I have 103,000 bosses. I have to answer to the people.
Right.
Just as any elected official. But we are the executive branch of government. We take care of contracts. We any laws that are passed, we enact those laws. We are that constant face of the county. We are, making daily decisions. We're in Annapolis. We're creating relationships with delegates, senators, the governor, sometimes even up to the president. So it really just depends on the day, honestly. But like I said, I think the biggest thing to remember is we are that balance of power. We, execute laws, we, like I said, the contractual part of it. And like I said, you're making those daily decisions. You're running the county on a daily basis. Now, as the elected official, you have a director of administration and a deputy director of administration. So those finite details, a lot of times they're the ones sort of working through those daily things. And the executive is sort of, again, the face of the county, which is why I was at the ribbon cutting yesterday. So, but that's, I know we don't have a ton of time, but that's, kind of my job in a nutshell. But again, you are the representative of the people, which I think is a really important position.
Right. Speaking of Annapolis, you went up there 2 weeks ago or a week ago. I saw you posting some pictures. Is that often? Do you go up to Annapolis often?
Yeah, we do. We, especially during sessions. So from January to April, we are up there a lot, especially these last 2 sessions. We've had really important bills that we've put forward. So that's just another thing, drafting bills and putting them forward, for state legislation. So, we definitely have great working relationships up there, and it helps because we're able to not only get our legislation passed, but we're also to be able to bring funds, back down here to the county. So having those good relationships is super important.
Yeah. One more thing I want to add in there. I know that we just lost Delegate Anderton, and he was replaced with Mr. Barry Beecham. The question came up the other day. Somebody asked me, Delegate Anderton was at the liquor board or the liquor press conference,
Mhm.
and they asked, if you have a good relationship with Mr. Barry Beecham. And I know that from a personal standpoint, but I figured we'd let people hear from your voice as well.
Yeah, so the two of them actually work very well together. And I will be honest, I know the way that the process works is that the Central Committee chooses the person. So the Central Committee had interviews, the Republican Central Committee. If Delegate Anderton had been a Democrat, it would have been the Democratic Central Committee. But
Right.
the Republican Central Committee did interviews. They chose him unanimously. But I will be honest with you, Delegate Anderton or former Delegate Anderton's opinion very much mattered. The relationship that he has with his constituents is very unique. He is a
Yeah.
big representative of his district, so he wanted to make sure that his people were going to be taken care of. And there were a couple of names that he was okay with, and Barry was one of them. So there really wasn't too much of a fight, putting his name forward. And we were so grateful because Governor Moore sent the confirmation that Barry will be sworn in. So the official thing won't happen till he is sworn in, but we've gotten the confirmation that is going to happen.
Awesome. You took over position in, was it January?
December.
December. Okay.
Yeah,
so
December.
You're coming up on, year number 2 here in, 4 months, I guess it is.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of time, in office now, besides the craziness that goes on with the council and a very small group of people that have been having issues. Are you enjoying this new role? I mean, this is a big difference between going from a teacher to basically running the county.
Yeah, no, I do. I really do love the job. I love, every day, when I flip the lights off in my office, I ask myself, what did I do to help the people of Wicomico County today? And there hasn't really been a day yet that I couldn't come up with an answer for that. And so being able to make life a little bit easier or a little bit better for people, whether that means, filling in a pothole, as simple as that, or if it's, making sure that the kids are going to have a safe playground, down in Powellville. So it just really depends on the day. I love the change, not one day is the same. And we have done, I think, a really great job at making the administration really available to the public for the most part. And then, like I said, forming those relationships across the bridge and making sure that we are bringing as many dollars as we can back to the county. But yeah, no, I do love the job. My son is starting to like the job. He hated it, at first. He missed my teacher schedule, and but he's starting to see that it is kind of cool that his mom, is the county executive, and with that, comes some really cool things. But yes, for the most part, every single day, I really do. I love coming to work every day. I love the people I work with, and the people of the county have just been amazing coworkers. So
good. There's been 4 county executives now in Wicomico County: Mr. Pollitt, Mr. Culver, Mr. Soda, and of course, you're blessing us with your presence now. Seems to me, and many others, that each of those before you have had their issues. May not all be the same, but there's always been issues between the county council and the county executive. And some say it's a play on power, as they want the full control of the decision making in Wicomico County. From your standpoint, from what you see, what do you think is the reason why there's always these issues?
So I think a lot of it does stem from, people having a hard time letting go of the power. As a councilmanic form of government, the commissioners have a lot of power. And, that power was divided once the county executive came in, and there was this creation of a charter, and it is that balance of power. What has happened, though, over the years is you will have for lack of a better term, maybe power hungry council, or you'll have some people in the council that the county executive will do something that is an inherent power. And we've seen this in my administration, but the county council or the county executive, whether it was Rick or Bob or John, will do something that is an inherent power of the executive. The council may not like that. And then they legislate their way away from the county executive being able to do that. And to me, that's an abuse of power. You have this balance of power, and as you start chipping away at one, you start seeing this, happen. And so to me, the unsuccess happens when you start messing with the balance of power. And I think that is what's happened here. I think for me personally, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but for me personally, I don't think I was ever taken seriously. I wasn't taken serious as a candidate. When I came forward and said I was going to run, people are like, yeah, okay, like this girl's really going to do this. And, when I got myself out there and I was able to campaign and I'm door knocking and I'm, sending out mailers and we're at every event and we're doing this and we're doing that, people are like, oh, okay, like she's for real. Like she's really real. And I think, there hadn't been a campaign like that in Wicomico County for a really long time. And so to be able to come in as an outsider and, be able to win an election, not just the primary, but also the general, I think was a huge thing. And so I think being an outsider also makes a big difference. I was never part of this good old boys network. My husband's not part of it. My husband works in Delaware. We don't have connections down here or businesses down here or a ton of real estate down here. Like we literally own our house. I was a teacher. He is the vice president of an aircraft company in Delaware. So we didn't really have that inner working connection of anything. And so I think it kind of makes me kind of dangerous as well in a way where I don't have anything to lose. Like I don't have a business down here. I'm not, in it like in that way. I come to work every day and I try to do what's right. And so it's that, that famous line that everyone says, now I'm not a politician, but I'm really not.
Right.
I'm really not a politician, and I think that was, a big part of it. But since the very beginning, I think it has been a struggle. We tried really hard to form relationships. And 2 weeks into office, there was something that was brought up that I was doing wrong. And I'm like, I literally have been in this 14 days. Like, how can, and so when you're being accused of things and things like that 14 days into office, by the council or by whoever, it makes it really difficult. It really sets the stage for how things are going to be. So.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, that's how we got to know you. And that's how we came to endorse you, because it was like every single place we went back then, we were going out to all the different events and we were going to different places and we saw you everywhere. Like you were boots to the ground. It didn't matter where it was at. You were there and you were getting your name out there and you did a great job with it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We didn't know what we were doing. I mean, in all honesty, it was me. And I mean, my husband was supportive, don't get me wrong, but he was kind of taking care of our son while I'm out doing this. And it was me and my campaign manager, we were out doing that. And we had some help, don't get me wrong. There was a couple of people that came in, but yeah, I mean, we just, did everything and did anything I could, making sure that I was consistently posting on Facebook, social media, whether it was that or Instagram, and updating our webpage, going here, going there, showing the public that we are, serious and that we really, wanted to win this position, so, but.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be doing my job here and doing it right if I didn't ask some difficult questions. So,
Sure.
So one of the questions that we hear often, and I'm sure you've heard it 10 times at least from the county council meetings, is, they can't get along with you for whatever reasons. We've heard Ms. Shaney Shields, we've heard Mr. Merritt, we've heard Shane Baker say that there's a lack of communication when it comes to the county council and the county executive office.
Right.
So it goes both ways, but what do you think is the main issue that's caused that?
Well, I think where things are now is I have removed myself from the county council meetings, and I'll explain why in just a bit. But we tried open communication. I tried, to kind of start off. But as I told you, 2 weeks into office, it was a Friday. I will never forget it. I was sworn in December 6th. So this was like before Christmas. There was a meeting set up between the council president and the council vice president at the time. And I was, we thought it was going to be about the upcoming council meeting. I mean, the next one, like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to go over it. And Bunky, my director of administration, was very excited. And they sat us down and said, well, we think you are doing something that is kind of sketchy. It has to do with positions. It has to do with this. It has to do with that. And, throughout, misappropriation of funds and this, that, and the other. And of course, nothing, came of that because it wasn't that. But that's how the tone was set. And it was kind of like, wait a minute, I thought we were going to try to mend this relationship and try to work. And 2 weeks into it, you're sitting here saying I've done something wrong. Meanwhile, the very steps that they tried to lay out for me, I'm like, these are the steps I followed. I talked to HR, I talked to finance. I found that, knowing that this was going to be a temporary solution, to try to get a staff together for me. So that's kind of how the precedent was set. But, we moved on from that. There was a point in time where I did open door session. So I would send a bunch of dates over to the council and say, hey, I'm available on this date, this date, this date, from this time to this time. If any of these times work, please come in. Councilman Merritt came in. I believe Councilman Baker came in. Councilman Wynn came in. But nobody else ever did. So Ms. Shaney never came in. Josh never came in. Mr. Cannon never came in. Mr. Holloway never came in. So, so right off the bat, that kind of says something in itself. Like here, I'm offering multiple times, for you guys to come in, and only a few took advantage of it. So I started in the council meetings, I started sitting up there with them. And then as that relationship sort of started tarnishing a bit, I was like, you know what, like, this is their meeting. I know the city does it that way, where the mayor and the council or the city administrator are sitting up there. And I said, but you know what, I think I'm just going to be in the audience. Like, it's their meeting. There's really no reason for me to be sitting up there. So I decided, and it was kind of like, I think, a mutual thing. Like, I just kind of removed myself from that. And so I was in the audience. And then when the whole situation happened with Safari at the Quarrey, and we all know that because I know you've covered it on Eastern Shore Undercover.
Yes.
But when that all went down and the council started allowing their council meetings to be run in a way where you are not following your own rules, where people are bashing you, where people are, saying horrific things and they're being allowed to do so. Or I think you've pointed out too, like, some people are given 5 minutes to speak, some are given 10, but like, if it's somebody that is there for me or myself, you have 3 minutes. I've never been in an organization where a county executive can't speak for more than 3 minutes. Like, that doesn't happen across the state. So, I just said, I'm just going to remove myself. Like, I'm not going to be there and hear that. And it has turned, and I have said this, their council meetings have turned into a circus. It is a circus in there. It is like a Jerry Springer episode. And I'm just not going to be a part of it. My department heads, if they have to go over there and they're in front of them, that's fine. But I mean, look at what happened. And I know we're probably going to get into it, but look at what happened. There was a MOU signed between you and I. And you and I weren't even invited to talk in the work session.
Right.
We weren't even invited. So it's like, it's little things like that where it's like, they complain that I'm not there, but you don't even have, like, I'm not even a part of it. Like, am I supposed to just sit in the audience and just listen to people like bash me consistently? Like, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. I don't need that for my health, my mental health. Like, I told my husband and my child, like, they don't even watch council meetings anymore because I'm like, why? Why are we going to do that? And I think they've turned a lot of people off. And like I said, the way that they run their council meetings, I think, says more about the content of their character than me. So I just can't be a part of it. If we have to get legislation passed, my department heads go over there, Bunky handles it. I just don't need to be a part of it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And that was actually our next question. You covered everything we were going to ask. And I totally agree. I mean, one of the most frustrating things for me and many people that follow our page is the fact that what you just said, they get up there and they'll allow, various people to speak for, 5 minutes. But then the lady that runs our county gets up there and they cut you off at 3 minutes. And I think that's the most disrespectful thing.
Yeah, it's just really frustrating. And to have, I think at one point in time, it was stated that, well, you're no different than any other citizen. And that's fine. If that's the way that you view me, that's fine. You know what I mean? Then there's really no reason for me to be a part of this. If you don't view me as at least an equal to where we're both elected officials, like, I don't need to be a part of that, and
I agree.
Yeah, I just don't see it being beneficial in any way.
Yeah. Next up, I want to move on, talk about one of the hot topics that you've encountered since you took office. What, in my opinion, has to probably be the biggest headache that you've had to deal with, and that's the Safari at the Quarrey.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because, look, it's in the past. It's over. I know some people won't let it be in the past, but, from my eyes, it's in the past. But a lot of people are confused with thinking this was going to be a park. And when the decision was made to make it into a work site and table the park, the whole idea. So can you explain how that happened? So, like, when this started the whole talk about this park was not when you were in office, correct?
Correct.
And when it was tabled, or I guess maybe it's not a good word, tabled, but when it was taken off, who was responsible for that? How did that work out?
Sure. So I'll give you a brief timeline. So basically, how it worked was there is this piece of property that somebody wanted the owner of the previous owner of the property wanted the county to buy, and they were trying to sell it for like $1 million, I think it was. And the county said, no, we're not interested. We're not interested. Finally, they said, well, we'll just gift it to the county. And so I wasn't in office. Bob Culver was in office. And Weston Young, who is now the administrator in Ocean City, or I'm sorry, in Worcester County, he was here. And so how he sort of sold it to the council was, hey, this is a site. Let's acquire this land. It's free. We'll be able to get millions of dollars worth of dirt from it, which is true, for the landfill. And then what he told the group at Shadow Hills, because he did have conversation with them, is that after we are done mining this site, we will go ahead and look at what we could do to make this a park. And the whole idea that Bob had, which I thought was a great idea, was to build a bridge between Henry S. Parker and Conley Mill and do it as an extension. One thing they talked about was having a campsite out there and all these different things out there to turn it into a park. Well, you have that contention between Bob and the county council, and because it was Bob's idea, they're obviously not going to go with it. So there was a conversation had where this potentially could be an option. Steve Miller kind of came forward. He's our director of Rec and Parks, and said, hey, we could take the conversion, the program open space conversion that we had for the west side, which is West Metro Core, and we can transfer it over here and, potentially turn this into a park. And the council, long story short, there was discussion, but the council said they didn't want to do that. Nicole Ackley, who was district representative for District 2, or the councilwoman for District 2, she said, no, my people on the west side deserve a park. And she's, representing, her constituents. And, quotes, I mean, you can pull right from the council meeting. You have John Cannon saying, I never see this as a park. It's not going to be a park. We don't see that. So it ended up at that point in time, the conversion was not going to happen. We knew that there were years still left to dig, so we still had years and years to dig. So again, I was not in office. At that point in time, Bob Culver ended up passing away. John Pasota takes over. And so once it was tabled by the county council, you were right, it was tabled. We're just not going to do that conversion. That resolution's not going forward. We continued designing West Metro Core. And then Conley Mill just continued to be a work site, to dig the dirt. What's interesting, though, is that no one from Shadow Hills showed up during that council meeting, when they were doing the possible conversion. So it's just kind of interesting. Nobody really showed up there. There wasn't allowed, whatever going on. So then I came into office and I was approached by Brad Hoffman. And he said, hey, the site out there, I know it's a work site, but I was wondering, what would you think about doing an event out there? And I was like, oh, okay. So this was not like a permanent thing. This was not something that we were going to do over and over and over again. But it was something that we could do simultaneously because they're still digging Monday through Friday. And then on the weekend, we could designate it to where it's not a work site and we can have this, this event. So we thought it was an awesome idea. We thought it was great, and I'm surprising everybody. Little did I know that, hell was going to break loose, at Shadow Hills. And I think a lot of people have said to me, I don't understand why you just didn't end the MOU. And the reason that I didn't is because my word is my bond. And I had a contract with this man and if he decided that he wanted to end the contract, I wouldn't have argued. But he didn't. Right. We were doing this event. We're moving forward with it. We had the event. You were there. It was nothing of what people thought, and it just costed the taxpayers a ton of time and money to have to deal with just these situations. And I think that kind of was the foundation of this whole, and I know we'll get into it, but the whole ballot initiative. But I think one of the questions that people have about the SEDS document, and they're like, hey, did you remove this from the SEDS document? So really quick, SEDS stands for Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, and that is done through the Tri-County Council. I am a member of that group. So are all of the members of the county council, including the council administrator. Now, there's a lot of people on that, but they are all, and we are all one vote on that. I do not attend the Tri-County Council meetings. I have another meeting that happens simultaneously. So Bunky is my proxy. It was voted upon because of the decision not to turn it into a park. And we still had 10 years, to do, we still have a lot of dirt left. And I think now it's even up to 14 years. That it would just be removed from the said document because there's no sense in keeping something on a document that's not even relevant for the next, decade. So
Right,
it
right.
was voted on by every member, council people, council administrator, and my director of administration. The only person that wasn't in that vote was me. And I'm getting blamed for the whole thing. So it was thought to be removed. And then I think also they had talked about the CIP where it was taken off. Well, it was decided to be taken off by John Pasoda and Pam Oland, who's our director of finance, because the council made the decision, hey, this is not going to move forward as a park anytime soon. Still have 10 years left of dirt. So we're not going to put it on a 5-year plan because it's still 10 years left of dirt. So, so that's, there's a lot of, trying to, it's like a web of things, like trying to figure it out. Long story short, they were told it could potentially be a park when we're done digging, and that is still not off the table, but we are not going to be done digging for between 10 and 14 years. So it's not going to be anytime soon.
That was our next question I was going to ask, in the future. I mean, these it's abundantly clear they're not going away. They're going to keep going to the council meetings and, bringing this up at public comment. From your opinion, do you think this will turn into a park, or do you think it'll be, I know at 14 years from now, that's a long time. I mean, that's 2 more terms for you.
Yeah.
Even taking you out of the region, do you think it'll turn into a park?
Maybe. It just depends. It depends on what it is. And I know at one point in time they talked about, well, why can't we have it as walking trails simultaneously with the site? Well, we can't do that. So because we mine the dirt, there has been opinions given out by MSHA, which is our mining company, the mining permitting group, that have said you cannot do both. It cannot be a full-time park and a mining site. It just literally cannot. So we can't do anything simultaneously. The only reason we were able to have safari at the quarry is because we closed the mining site for 2 days. So, that's the only reason we were able to do that. But I'm not saying it wouldn't be a park, but it's a decision that's going to be far beyond me. We still have 10 to 14 years. I do not plan. If question A, and I know we'll talk about that, but if that fails and the county executive position stays and I get reelected, there's a lot of ands and ifs. I'm not staying for 10 to 12 years. I'm not doing that.
Right.
So it would be beyond me anyway. It would be the next county executive that can, that can fight that fight. So.
Right, exactly. Let's talk about the MOU for transparency, and that's what I'm going to call it, because everybody keeps saying the MOU with Eastern Shore Undercover, and while I was the one that took advantage of it and signed an MOU, it was offered to other outlets. What brought you to that decision when you decided, hey, you know what, we need to have some kind of transparency here?
Right. So, encryption was a topic that had been brought up to me earlier on this year, in February. I didn't really love the idea. I think, when I think of encryption, I think of hiding things, and I don't really like that. But, long story short, and I won't get into the details, we had a meeting with all of law enforcement, all of the fire chiefs. We had the right people in the room. And, officer safety was definitely one of the key things. They talked about sensitive information going out. There were reasons why people have encrypted and encryption has happened across the state and also across the country. So in that room, it was decided by law enforcement that the law enforcement channels would go encrypted and that the fire and EMS would not at this point in time. And so I was okay with it. But as that decision was made, there were a lot of things that were brought to my attention. So first and foremost, there is legislation all over the country that is going out because people are having an issue with police agencies going to full encryption without having something in place to make sure that the people are getting the information, that it's adhering to PIA, that we're being transparent, all of these different things. So that's kind of coming in my mind. I had gotten wind from one of the delegates and senators on the other side of the bridge that had talked about Maryland moving in that direction.
Baltimore City just went through the same thing, and they had to change everything.
Right, exactly. So we're starting to see that. And so I started to have some questions about, okay, is this really okay? Are we able to do this? I don't see is any agency that is fully encrypted and that's it. Like that there's nothing that doesn't put the information out there. If you look at Baltimore City, fully encrypted, but they use Broadcastify. I know you've talked
Right.
about that. So 15-minute delay, the information is out.
Mhm.
So I didn't see anybody who's fully encrypted and doesn't do anything. And so that's kind of where we were. And we had our county attorney look at what was being put out by the different agencies. And he was very concerned that it didn't meet PIA requirements. And so I think a lot of people had the question of, well, why didn't you involve law enforcement in this decision? And I did. I
Yeah.
emailed law enforcement. I emailed, our sheriff, and I said, hey, I have these questions. This legislation's coming out. Like, we probably need a policy. Let me know if you have any questions. Like, can we talk about this type thing? And unfortunately, I didn't hear from him. So it made it very difficult. And so I felt like we were moving forward and we were kind of in the dark too, kind of feeling our way through, like, how is this going to look? And making sure that we're, doing everything that we can. We've just been in a lawsuit with the NAACP. Like, I don't need another lawsuit about transparency, So it kind of brought to my attention. I was like, maybe we can figure out a way to work with local news agencies to see if they can, help us with this transparency. And so that's kind of how the idea was sparked. It wasn't, something that was malicious or trying to go against what, our law enforcement wanted. It literally was to protect the county from litigation. And
Yeah.
I'm still worried about that. I get a lot of complaints still now that, because we've paused the MOU with you guys, they are not getting the information that is needed. They'll see, a bunch of police cars down their street and they're wondering what the heck is going on, and they don't know what's going on, and they don't like not knowing, and they're used to knowing, and now they don't know. And so it's very tough. I have a lot of constituents that are really upset right now. And so it's trying to figure out what is the best answer. And so we're hoping to have a little bit more clarification in the next couple weeks. But the whole idea of why we did the MOU was because, or putting out that, hey, help us. What do you guys think? Can you help us with this? Was just to, for transparency reasons. It had nothing to do with anything else. So, and unfortunately, our law, people chose to not be a part of that discussion, didn't feel that it was a necessity to answer or email back or anything. So they had an opportunity to be a part of it and chose not to be. So.
Yeah. I want to just chime in on a couple things that you said. Number one, I can tell you 100% that you did send that out to other, media outlets, because we've seen that. We've seen WBOC, the WMDTs, Mike Bradley said it on the radio the other day that, multiple agencies were offered this, but I think they kind of spun it so that it made it look like it was just offered to Eastern Shore Undercover,
Right.
Which was very unfortunate because that's not what it was at all. And, and then the second thing, I think there's a lot of misleading information out there is like, well, they're all against encryption, and correct me if I'm wrong. I have different opinions about it. We may not agree with it, but you're actually for encryption, but just done the right way, which is what I've said on many different radio stations, but it's not getting through to people.
Right. I think a lot of people do think that I'm like anti-encryption, and that is not the case at all. Like I'm definitely okay with, a ton of people not having access to scanners, especially if people are, if they're using it for nefarious reasons, which, obviously I don't think was happening too much here. I hadn't seen any stories that had come out with that, but I do know across the state, people were using them for, bad reasons. So I am not against encryption at all by any means. But what I am against is picking and choosing what people are allowed to know and not know. And I don't like that.
And when they're going to be able to know it.
Right. And when. Yeah. And that's the thing. And I think that's the biggest thing here is that I'm okay with about 98% of it. But the biggest argument I think that we have, or where that, the different sides come in are, right, the timeliness of it. The timeliness and then the content is what we are putting out enough information to keep our public informed. And so, and I'll be honest, we have, there was an attorney general opinion that said 911, calls are considered public record. But, that was done in 1986. And so I think it's important, for people to have an updated, updated opinion. So that is something that the AG is working on at this point in time. So,
Good.
And I think it's important, for that. And it has nothing to do with anything else other than keeping the public informed. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, you're only doing that because Earl's your friend or Eastern Shore Undercover is your friend. And that's not the case at all. I have hundreds of constituents that are really upset right now. So I am trying
Yes.
to help out my constituents as well. So,
You got to put some
it's
disclaimers out there, ma'am. Did I bribe you to come on here?
no,
Okay,
no,
just
you
make
didn't
it sure
bribe
because you know it's
me.
going to come up.
No.
It's going to come up in the council meeting here, and I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. No, I wasn't bribed. I came here on my own free will.
There you go. So we've seen, like Sheriff Lewis went into the council, a couple weeks back. I don't even know when it was, 3 weeks ago, and discussed, at least from what I stand, it was a dog and pony show towards, like you said, yourself and me. Neither of which were invited there. I wasn't invited there. I don't know if you were. Since that took place, has there been any progress at all from the sheriff's office towards a step in the right direction, I guess I should say?
I would say probably not with this situation. I have not heard from him at all on any topic, let alone this one, which is fine. I mean, and like I said, he's entitled to his own opinion. But, I say this about a lot of people. You are entitled to your own opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. And
Right.
so I think that he was very frustrated about how the situation went down. But what's more frustrating for me is that we are both elected officials. Pick up the phone and call. Schedule a meeting. And if you don't want to meet with me, schedule it with Bunky, Director of Administration, or Matt Leitzel, who was a 23-year police officer. Like, I think that he can, very much relate and empathize to how you're feeling about this. And unfortunately, he chose a different path. And I would just hope that if I have an issue, and it's definitely a lesson that I learned, if I have an issue, I'm not going to go, I think, and do a whole big, projection of things and, without actually having, a conversation. And so that's what's frustrating. So besides the email and meeting with two different people of his command staff saying, hey, like, I want to have a discussion about this, and him choosing to go that route was just, really disheartening, in a way. And, but as I said, I think that there was a lot of, I won't even say like, it was just misinformation in there. I think there were a lot of assumptions made. And I think a lot of that presentation on both ends were based on emotions and assumptions, rather than facts. And so I think now that the facts are out there, I think it creates a little bit more of a complete picture, I think.
I agree. So more misleading information that we've heard it on the radio. We've heard it on different, interviews, that I may still have the radio. Can you tell us who has that radio now, if you even know?
Yeah. So the radios were actually my radio.
Have that radio?
No, you don't have that radio. I have mine.
Okay,
It's right
thank
here.
you.
So mine is here. But your radio, no, is at emergency services. So, emergency services is in charge of the radios. And so it is back there. So no, you do not have the radio.
Yeah.
But
Speaking
ours,
of
ours are in our
emergency
office, so we can communicate, in case there's an emergency, but no, you do not have your radio anymore.
Gotcha. So speaking of emergency services, real quick, because I got a funny story for you. So everybody's always talked about, I've heard you talk about, say his name at the council meeting or somewhere, Mr. Lorenzo Cropper. And so when I was a police officer in Ocean City, there was a Lorenzo Cropper in Ocean City. And I assumed that he was the same man that is now working for you. And I saw him the other day and I said hello to him. And he's like 80 years old now. And he's like, hey, yeah. And I said, how do you like working with Miss Julie? And he kind of looked at me and he's like, huh? He's like, I'm only here like 3 months out of the year. He's like, I'm usually down in Florida. And I'm like, but he works for Miss Julie. I said, you're Lorenzo Cropper, right? And he said, yeah. And I found out that there's two Lorenzo Croppers. So it was a different man.
Wrong one.
Yeah, so this whole time I thought
my Lorenzo's here. He's not in Florida. That's funny.
Yeah. So let's move on to this whole ballot initiative and the craziness that surrounds it.
Sure.
So for those of you that don't know, there is a ballot initiative in the upcoming November election, and the ballot initiative is attempting to remove your position from Wicomico County. When that first happened, did it kind of shock you when the council began taking steps towards this, what I'll call insanity? And what were your thoughts when that happened?
Yes Well, there's nothing that they do that surprises me, I don't think anymore. I
No.
didn't know if they would go all the way through with it, like if they had just brought it forward and just said, "Hey, this is something that we're thinking about." I think the thing that is so frustrating is this is not the will of the people. This is the will of five that sit up at the council meeting and like four other people. So it's
Mhm.
like it's very interesting to me that they feel that they, and like so four of them are like brand new council people, that they should be the voice of 103,000 people. Like you've literally been a council person for like 18 months and you're going to
Right.
make decisions that affect the entire county government. And
Yeah.
then four of them aren't even running again. So it's like
Yeah.
you're going to do it was unbelievable to me, but not shocking. So I'll say that.
Yeah.
So, again, I think they are hoping that the uninformed voter just goes in and pulls yes and then it's a done deal. But I have to make sure that every single person that walks into that building, wherever they're voting, whether it's a school or church or wherever they're voting, understands exactly what they're voting for. And
Yeah.
I want them to know, because that's what is so important, is they need to understand this is a power grab. It is, disrupting the balance of power. It's going against the will of the people. This has already been voted on. This was voted on before, and they did it the right way. They did a straw poll first to see what the flavor would be, and then they put it forward and it passed. So this is obviously what people want. It wasn't just five council people saying, "Oh yeah, well, she doesn't want to come to our council meeting, so now we're just going to get rid of the entire position." And my favorite is
Yeah.
when they say, "Oh, well, this isn't really personal."
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
literally heard a council person say, "Oh, so you're on Julie's side." But
Right.
it's not personal. I'm like, this is not Julie's side. This is the people versus the five of you. That's what it
Yep.
is. It's the people's voice and the five of you. I just happen to be in the way, of there,
Yep.
and so it's really disheartening to think that you have elected officials that are not listening to the voices of their constituents and just doing what they want to do. It's frustrating.
Yeah. One of the other very misleading um, concepts that's being put out there is that if they get rid of your position, it's going to save millions and millions of dollars. And I don't know what your salary is. I'm not going to ask you, but can you explain that this is not going to save millions of dollars, because the
Sure.
job still needs to get done?
Yeah. So it's not saving any money. So this is what's so funny. So I mean, my salary's posted. Every government employee's is. So I make $107,000 a year as the county executive. So I have a director of administration, deputy director of administration, and two office staff ladies. And so the council keeps saying, "Well, this is going to save us $800,000." Well, that means that you're
Mhm.
eliminating the entire office, not just me. I don't
Right.
make 800,000. So that's eliminating Matt, Bunky, me, AK, Lisa. So the five of us, our entire staff would be gone. Now, here's the
Right.
deal. They still have to hire a director of the county. You know what I mean? So they have that. That person is going to need staff. Like the person can't just do it on their own. So you have you'll have
Yeah.
another deputy and then you'll have it. So literally what they would be potentially saving, I guess, is $107,000, because you're still going to have a staff here. And so
Mhm.
depending on the needs of that person, and you might not even save that much. So I don't want to hear that you're saving a whole bunch of money. You're not saving a whole bunch of money. That is a
Right.
bunch of baloney. And for
They've
them to
already
sit
said
there
that
and
they're
say
going to
that.
replace you with a manager, someone in that position. Just they want to be able to control that person.
Exactly. They want a county executive, but they want a county executive that they can control. And if that
Yeah.
person doesn't listen to them, they can fire them at any point in time for any reason. And to
Yep.
me, whether it was 800,000 or 100,000 or $5, how much is your voice worth? How
Right.
much is your vote worth? Like how much is the voice of the people? Like how do you put a price tag on that?
Yeah.
My boss, like I told you, are the 103,000 people in this county. I have
Mhm.
103,000 bosses, of
Yeah.
people that voted me into office. And even those who didn't vote for me, they're still my boss. And there have been people who have come to me with constituent issues that did not vote for me. They were very vocal about the fact they didn't vote for me. And we still help them, because that's what you do as a county
Mhm.
leader. And so I can't imagine anybody in this county willingly handing over their voice and saying, "Yeah, my vote doesn't matter. My voice doesn't matter. Yeah, go ahead, county council. Go ahead and pick the person that you're going to
Right.
keep under your thumb and do everything that you want to do." I just can't imagine that. I
No.
mean, it's
And I don't
crazy
think it
to
will.
me.
I don't think. I mean, I'll tell you this: if I thought that there was any chance that this, was going to pass or they were going to get rid of this position. I see the comments that come in each day. I see the messages that come in, and people are just not happy with this whole incident. They feel that we've already voted for this once. Why are we going through it again? And that's what we keep
and everyone
hearing.
has said it's a personal. They're making it personal. And when you start hearing, oh, you're on Julie's side or our side, I don't view it as my side or their side. I view it as the voice of the people or being under the rule of the county council.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine anybody wanting that. And it's regressive. When you get to a point in a county where you have a county executive, that is a step forward. That is a big thing. There's only 9 of us, out of 23 jurisdictions. So there's only 9 of us. And, it's crazy to me that we would take a regressive step backwards. Like literally we have counties now who have the councilmanic form of government that are looking to move to county executive because they want that balance of power. They want to have that balance. They want to have checks and balances. So it's crazy to me. Nobody in their right mind would vote for this. If you are a constitutional person and understand balance of government and understand the idea that this is the way, like you don't see us trying to get rid of the governor position. You don't see us getting rid of the president position. This is exactly how our country was founded, on 3 branches of government with checks and balances. Why anybody would vote to have that go away is crazy to me. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. If people don't agree with what you're doing, then in 2 years, then vote you out. But don't replace that position, because once we get rid of it, then we got to go through the whole process again and get it again.
Yeah.
When they find somebody, it just makes no sense.
Yeah, I saw an op-ed in the Salisbury Independent, and it's like, they're very concerned that once this is gone, it'll never come back. And you won't ever have a voice again. You will never have where your vote really counts, when it comes to the leader of the county. And so, and especially, with the potential, who knows what's going to happen? You've got this lawsuit coming in with the NAACP, our districts may change. You've just got a lot of changes going on, and we still have to run a functional government. So it's just, it's crazy to me. It really is. Yeah. So I'm hoping that people understand this is not about me. I don't care if you like me or don't like me. I hope you like me. But if you don't, that doesn't mean that you still have to vote yes to that. Vote no, because that way you have the ability to put somebody in that you really like, or that represents your values. You know what I mean? And so, but don't let the council take that away from you at all. Right. Don't allow that to happen. So.
Yeah. Now, one thing that my wife brought up is that the question itself is very confusing. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is when people go to the voting polls and they're in there and they're going to make that decision, that they're going to check the wrong box.
Right.
We want to make it abundantly clear that they want to check no. It's not, it's very confusing. It's vote against, and then you're going to vote no.
Right. Well, so I think people vote no, vote against. So yes, it's going to be a vote for or a vote against. And so what they've done is the council is proposing a change, right? So you just have to look at it that way. The council is proposing a change to go back to the councilmanic form of government. Are you for that change or are you against that change? And so we want to be against that change and keep things the way that they are. So that's the biggest thing. And so, yes, you have to push against. You don't want to have that change happen. So again, the council has proposed the change to go backwards. You want to vote against that change.
Yeah. Gotcha. So last week I posted an article, and I don't know if you can answer this or not. And if you can't, you won't offend me if you say no. It was basically an editorial, and in there I explained what I had found. And I'm not sure if you read it or not, but it seems to me that there is a group, the same individuals that go into the council chambers and, talk very nicely about you, who are taking donations. And in my opinion, they're doing it illegally. From the way I read the law, they cannot take donations anonymously. And from the way I've seen it, and I witnessed it personally, I was there, I watched it happen. They're taking money, donations. And not only that, you can go online and make a PayPal donation or whatever it is. Is that true? In your opinion, can they take these anonymous donations?
So you can't ever take an anonymous donation in a campaign or on a ballot initiative. So with PayPal, actually, they could do the PayPal. They just have to make sure that this is why most politicians use Anodot. Now, the problem with Anadot a lot of times is that it takes a percentage of your money. But with what that percentage does is it makes sure that you are filling in all the fields that you need to fill in. PayPal does not give you those prompts to fill in the correct amount of information because you need like employer, you need a bunch of different things, when somebody is making a donation to you. Politicians always will say, or people that are running for office, please write me a check. Don't give me cash, because cash is so tricky. First of all, it doesn't matter if it's $1 or $100. You have to fill out specific paperwork. So if you were to come to me and say, Julie, I'm donating $1 to your campaign or to this ballot initiative, I have to take down the same amount of information as if you gave me, $100. And I keep saying $100 because that is the most cash you can take from any one individual. Now, you could give me $100 cash. Your wife could give me $100 cash, but you have, but it's separate, it's two totally separate things. It couldn't be you guys together. Most politicians and people that are running for office don't even want to deal with cash. Like they just don't. It's so much easier for a credit card or for a check. And then also to use a program like Anadot because of that very thing. So no, you can't just have a bucket outside. I saw them too at the county fair. You can't just have a bucket out there collecting donations. You just can't. And I didn't know that. I didn't know all the ins and outs. Once I read your editorial, I saw that a complaint had been made. I didn't know that at the time. But it doesn't surprise me because there are very specific guidelines when it comes to funds with elections, and and they do it for good reason. It's to keep the corruptness out.
Right.
Are people really corrupt if they're collecting $1 here or there? No, but they have to be, there are rules in place for a reason. So you have to write down the donations of every single person. So you can't just have a bucket collecting out there.
So I got to ask this question because keeps getting brought up. It's been brought up by Mr. Holloway. It's been brought up by Sheriff Lewis. Brought up by people in Shadow Hills that I bribed you with $3,500. First of all, can you answer this question? Did I give that money to you before you were elected as county executive?
No, you gave it to me afterwards. And I think this is where a lot of people, I've had people there was an issue at our council meeting where my campaign finance report was printed and thrown at one of my employees or something. And the thing is that, yes, on that sheet, it's going to show that it was a campaign donation, but you have to look at the date. And our point was, while I was running for county executive, so from December 5th, 2022, before that, because I was sworn in on December 6th, there was no money given to me by you, your wife, Eastern Shore Undercover, nothing like that. When we were starting to lay the foundation for the next campaign and things like that, we decided that we were going to emphasize the business-friendly community, and we had a business-friendly event where businesses could come in, they could collaborate with one another. They supported me as the executive. They supported a more business-friendly economy. They could talk to one another, network. You were a sponsor of that event, along with Evo, along with Pohanka, along with St. John's Property. So I don't understand why there was this big thing that all of a sudden it's with you. I guess if I bought a car from Sandy at Pohanka, she would have bribed me to do it.
Yes.
I don't know. Or because I eat at Evo, it's because they, it's just crazy to me. And I think that they push this whole in a non-election year. Well, guess what? People campaign all the time. Andy Harris, you don't think this is an election year for him. You don't think he's going to be campaigning next year? He is. Right. You don't think Donald Trump has been campaigning this whole time? He has.
Absolutely.
Okay, he knew he was going to run for president again. So people campaign in off, or they collect donations in off years to build up that bank account, to build up that war chest. So it's just interesting to me. I'm sorry that nobody down here is politically savvy enough to know that. But that's all that is. And like I said, that was a business-friendly event for people to network, and you could be a sponsor. And Eastern Shore Undercover was a sponsor of that event. So,
and it's to me, it was pretty crazy. My web guy reached out to me. He's like, dude, send them over to the receipts where you paid for your website. And when you put up the post on Facebook showing you were trying to get ads, it was a perfect opportunity for me because I had just launched the website. We actually launched the website 3 weeks before then. And for me, it was the perfect spot for me to get in and meet these individuals. And if you look at the pictures from the event, me and my wife sat at the last table in the back because we didn't know anybody. It was my first time I ever met Mr. Barry and his wife. There was a lot of people there, a lot of business owners. It was a great event, and I thought it was awesome. We came home, put up a nice little thing on Facebook, and stuff can be, researched and found, but people just, for whatever reason, they just want to, and I think I put a post up yesterday saying that, people want to try to use that popularity of Eastern Shore Undercover as a negative in any way they can. And it's crazy to me, but neither here nor there. So we have a lot of community questions that were sent in. I put that up there, and some people sent in some questions. First and foremost, we have our old buddy, Mr. Conservative, who sent in a question, and I'm not going to answer that question.
I'm
not
saying it, Donald Reagan or whatever. Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your question?
Everywhere I go, this guy emails something to one of these news guys, and they all joke about it now, and it's pretty crazy. But anyway, our first question that I have is, and this is from Sharptown. If my brother and I donated cash to the other group, Mr. ESU, recently posted thinking it was for the executive position to stay, can we get in trouble or get our money back? That just ain't right because the wording was tricky. I need a slogan or whatever so I remember. So it's just going to be they go against everything she does, so I go against them from when we vote. Basically what we talked about before, it's a little bit confusing and a little bit, but they can't get in trouble for that.
No. So really quickly. They won't get in trouble. The organization would get in trouble for collecting donations. So no, because they're anonymous. So they kind of gave themselves away on this, but no, they wouldn't get in trouble, especially without the knowledge. It's really up to the person who is running or the organization to, because, normal citizens don't really know all those campaign laws, No. So, no, they will not be in trouble. No. Okay. So
our second question is from Salisbury. I'm going to ask it anyway. Question for Miss Julie. There's been a lot of issues with the fire service over the first due and box area, and you may not know that, and if you don't know it, I don't know it neither, so I want to make that clear. One department in particular had issues. What better can you do to mend the relationships between some of the career departments and some of the volunteer departments? Maybe consolidated company between all volunteer companies who opt in to provide better staffing to the county and protecting its residents.
So I think the fire is a little bit tricky. So we recognize that there are issues, throughout. I think our firemen, whether they're career or volunteer, do an excellent job in the resources that they're given. So, and I think that they do have limited resources. So I just want to say I'm very grateful to every single station, here in the county that provides coverage. I don't know if that's a really easy answer. We ended up just doing a SWOT analysis, but that was only for EMS. We didn't really touch fire. So until really the fire chiefs or the people who are in charge really come forward and say, hey, let's do an analysis of fire, I don't really want to speak too much on that. But that would definitely be a great question if that person wanted to come forward. They have a fire chiefs meeting. I think they just had it last night. It's usually it's like the last or the fourth Wednesday of the month. All the fire chiefs get together and have a meeting. But that would be a great question for them. And I don't know too much about it in that aspect. And I know that there is some hostility between volunteers and career. But, for the most part, what I have seen, honestly, is when it comes down to it and there's an emergency, all of those personalities are set aside and they do what they need to do. We have great, coverage here, and they do a really great job at with the resources that they're given. So I understand that they're all underfunded, but sorry, go ahead.
I got to say, about 3 weeks ago, it was actually the day that they had the council meeting with Sheriff Lewis. I sat down and met with Salisbury Fire Department, Rob. Chief Rampton, and super, super nice guy. First time I'd ever met him. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. So big shout out to that guy.
Yeah. I would probably say, to really talk to them about that, in all honesty.
Yeah. Could you ask Miss Julie to clarify that the Trump Vance yard signs at the Republican headquarters downtown are available for $10 donations, not for sale? Also, please let people know that purchase T-shirts, hats, bumper stickers at the headquarters. Also, could you ask Miss Julie? There's a bunch of questions here for you, Miss Julie. Mm-hmm. Explain Maryland question 1, which involves a change to the Maryland Constitution. It pertains to parental rights, not abortion. Right. So clearing up any confusion would be helpful. And then they have
Sure.
another one. I don't want to get too many at once.
Yeah, yeah. And I hate to tell you, I do have to probably hop off here in about 10 or 15 minutes. My
Sure.
dog has a vet appointment at 3, but
Absolutely.
so really quick. So yes, you can get all your Trump gear at the Republican headquarters. And the reason that they have it as a $10 donation and not for sale is because the organization that is actually paying for that, they can't technically sell stuff. So you could go
Oh.
and get a yard sign, but we are asking for a $10 donation, towards that, because the club did end up paying for all of those signs. So nothing was given to us for free or given to the club for free. So that's why we're asking for a donation, but they cannot technically sell anything. So that's just because of the
Gotcha.
organization.
Got
So
it.
question 1, really quick. So a lot of people are thinking that question 1 is about abortion and abortion rights and that they should be memorialized in our Constitution. So that is not the case with this. So if anybody is familiar, if you take a deep dive in history, not too deep, but in 1991, abortion was completely memorialized into law in the state of Maryland. There was a thought about doing some sort of restructure with it in 1992, but that didn't really happen. So 1991, abortion from conception all the way until birth is allowed in the state of Maryland, whether you agree with it or not. That is the law, and it is fully funded. So that is not changing, and there's no reason to have to put that in the Constitution. What's going in the Constitution is it says limited, but I'm sorry, it has to do with pregnancy. You'll see something with pregnancy. The word abortion isn't even in the ballot, but it's talking about the fact of basically the wording is saying you as a parent, or it's saying that any person has the right, but not limited to just pregnancy, for reproductive freedom, right? So
Okay.
what that means is that your children could go to their pediatrician, child, not adult, not 18, not 16, child, 12-year-old, 10-year-old could go to their pediatrician and say, I want puberty blockers. And the pediatrician, if it goes in the Constitution, has to give it to them without your consent as a parent. So it's the craziest thing I have ever heard in my life, where you are completely taking rights away from parents and putting doctors in horrific positions. And
Yeah.
so it's puberty blockers. There's all different types of things. They could have a mastectomy. They could have testicles removed, all of these different procedures, and parents have no say over it. They literally have no say. So you can be pro-choice and still vote against question 1. This is not taking abortion rights away from any sort of person. It is taking parental rights away. And the biggest thing is that our children need a permission slip to take Tylenol at school. Our children need a permission slip to go to the pumpkin patch. Okay. Our children need a permission slip to play sports. But if they want to have a mastectomy, sure,
Right.
go ahead and do it without parental consent of somebody under 18 years old. Children's brains are not developed. You can't say, well, they can't be held, legally liable because their brains aren't fully developed, and that's why 13-year-olds can't be charged. But that same 13-year-old that can't be held responsible for a crime
Right.
can decide that they want to, have a mastectomy, and that's fine. Or that they want to take puberty blockers, and that's fine. So reproductive freedom is not abortion. That's a piece of it, but it is everything else. And putting that in the Constitution is crazy to me. Anybody who is a parent should vote against it. I don't care if you are the farthest left Democrat, the farthest right. Nobody should be telling you, especially the government, what your child can and cannot do. That is crazy to me. And that's the thing, is that it says every person, and every person includes children. So that is question 1. I suggest looking more into question 1. I assumed abortion. And when I was told, and I'm a pro-life person, but not everybody is, and that's okay. But it's not just about that. It is taking parental rights away from you, and it is empowering children to make decisions that could really, really harm them later on. As a parent, again, I don't care where you are politically, don't allow the government to take that away from you, from your child. So again, you can be the most pro-choice person out there and still vote against question 1. So vote no to all the ballots. They're terrible. Question 1 is terrible. Question A is terrible. So
what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you, we have a couple other questions. I'm going to email them over to you.
Okay.
And then when you get a chance, I'll put them up on the page later on down the road.
All right.
I'm going to open up the podcast to you. I'm not going to put you on 3-minute clock. If there's anything else you want to say, have at it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate the time. And, at any point in time, if I'm ever welcome back, I love having, the community
Absolutely.
questions. I don't really get an opportunity to do that on my executive exclusives because there isn't really a call in feature. But maybe I'll say to people, hey, I'm going on my executive exclusive. Send me any questions you have, and I could address them that way. But this was really cool, to hear from the community. And if there's any clarification you need on any issue, I don't care what it is, whether it's, to vote for this, what does this question mean? Or even if it's a constituent issue or whatever else, please do not hesitate to reach out. We have wonderful ladies that work so hard on constituent issues, and we try to find solutions and answers for you, in any way, shape, or form. So, but I just appreciate it. And again, vote no to everything, vote against everything. They're not really good.
Right.
Any of
That's
those
right.
ballot initiatives, they're really going to change the landscape. One is going to change the landscape of our entire state, and the other is going to change the landscape of our county. And I don't think it's going to be for the better at all. So,
Right. I agree. Well, folks, that's all we got for today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I hope more than anything, it cleared up some questions for people out there, that have been confused. I want to graciously thank our county executive for stopping by and taking the time with us. For me, this ballot question is no brainer. It should not even be on the ballot, but it is, so we have to vote against it. Take away Miss Julie's pretty face and put in a person, whoever you want. You can put Shane Baker in there, John Cannon, Joe Holloway. You can even put Mike Lewis in there for all that matters. And my vote wouldn't change. We need that separation, and we need that vote to keep our county executive position. As a citizen of Wicomico County, we cannot allow this county council to have the full power over decision making. And many may not remember, but the main reason why the county executive position came about was because of the tax increases.
yeah,
And
24%,
right,
24%. So, people need to keep that in mind too, that when you give autonomy to one side of the government, that is what can happen. A
yes,
24%, increase can happen just like that. And there's not really much you can do about it.
yeah. So for me, this really should not even be a question on how to vote. My family and I will absolutely be voting against question A in this upcoming election. And I encourage anyone on this page to do the same. Do your homework, and we'll win this thing by a landslide. So thank you
Yeah.
all for tuning in today. I appreciate the support. And once again, thank you to the county executive for joining us today. I hope everyone has a great day.
All right. Thank you.